That's a little bit more about the world of concussions, brain injuries, and brain health. So today I want to talk to you about the brain before the injury, what building a resilient brain really looks like, what we can do to kind of optimize the brain before concussions ever occur. Because concussion recovery starts each morning that you wake up. It's not something that you don't wake up every morning going, I'm going to fall and I'm going to hurt myself today, or I'm going to get a concussion today. I need to make sure that I'm ready. Brain injury, brain health, brain resiliency starts before the concussion even happens. So today we're going to learn more about the idea behind what we need to do to set ourselves up for the best possible recovery and how we can prepare ourselves if we're an athlete going into our season for next year. So the goals for today, the first thing that we're going to try to define is we're going to talk about what resiliency really is and kind of what a resilient brain is. I want to talk about how we look at the different ways to prepare the brain for injury in the hopes that it never happens, but just in case it does, that we're ready. The second thing that we have is we're going to go through the bare minimum in brain health. And what that means is the minimum things that you should be doing every day to ensure that you are ready in case something does happen. The things that we should all be doing every day, whether we're a contact athlete or just, me waking up every day, going to work, hanging out with the kids and trying to be a normal functioning human, things that we should do that are considered the bare minimum in brain health. The third thing that I'm going to cover is how we optimize brain resilience. And what that means is what we can do to make sure that we're taking the next step from the bare minimum. Especially if I'm an athlete or somebody who's involved in physical activity, whether it's working a blue collar job, a weekend warrior, or an athlete at any level, what we can do to take that next step forward to kind of optimize the brain for total resiliency. And then the fourth thing that we're going to talk about is how we reduce concussion risks overall. It's a challenging topic that we'll touch on a little bit at the end. So what is a resilient brain? The brain is a fascinating organ. It's the most complex organ that we have in the human body. It is that one organ that we're still learning more and more about how it works, what it does as technology improves. And we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep it safe, not only from concussions, but from acquired brain injuries, traumatic brain injuries, any kind of impact trauma, whether it's a car accident or violence. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that the brain's healthy enough in the off chance that something does happen. So when we talk about what a resilient brain really is, we have to first define what resilient means. And resilient is the ability to withstand or recover quickly from difficult conditions. We can talk about somebody having resilience or somebody being resilient. We can also talk about brain resilience. And on this end of things, we're talking about the idea that the brain is able to withstand trauma, whether it's withstand the getting the concussion or the ability to recover quickly from the injury itself. When we talk about resilient doesn't mean it's unbreakable, right? So when we're talking about the overall idea of brain resilience, there is nothing that we can do. And again, this is something that I'm going to get into later. We're trying to do everything in our power to prevent injury, but there's nothing that we can do to totally prevent whether it's concussions or other injuries. There's nothing that we can do, but we can reduce risk. When we talk about trying to build a resilient brain, we're building a brain that is able to recover quickly or withstand the injury, not necessarily completely preventing it from happening. In a perfect world, concussions never happen, right? Everybody goes through the world healthy. We never get hurt. Nobody ever gets sick. In a perfect world, everybody, goes their entire lives being the best version of themselves. In the real world, we have to do everything we can to protect ourselves, to optimize the brain for brain health, and make sure that we're working to kind of move forward and preventing any injury that we can or reducing injury risk. So when we talk about the idea of building a resilient brain, it is not something that's completely unbreakable. The injury risk is still there. Injuries can still happen, but once we have started to build that resiliency, when the injury occurs, what are we doing to make sure that we're able to recover quickly and able to withstand the demand that concussion recovery brings in? So when we discuss the bare minimum for brain health, okay, what's the bare minimum? What are the things that everybody should be doing every single day? Every day that you wake up, there are certain things that you should be doing to optimize brain health. And that's not just our athletes, right? That is everybody waking up. Things that you can do that would be considered the bare minimum for brain injury recovery. So when we talk about brain health in general, the bare minimum that we need to go through is we need to keep in mind that this is not a one-time thing. You don't wake up and go, hey, what am I going to do to optimize brain health today? I missed out last week. What am I going to do, right? We can do those things, but in order to optimize brain health, it's a daily responsibility. It is something that you need to focus on every single day. It's a lifestyle. It's not a trick. It's not a game. It's not something that we can do once and say, hey, we're good. We did these things today. We don't have to worry about them anymore. When we talk about optimizing brain health, it's a daily responsibility, and it's something that you need to kind of force yourself to do initially, but it's a habit that we need to build just like anything else. So small steps, consistency is key, but it's a daily responsibility. So when we're talking about the bare minimums, the three key topics that we're going to talk about with the bare minimum for brain health is proper sleep, proper hydration, and proper nutrition. There are three things that people can do no matter what their cognitive ability level is, whether they're injured or not injured, no matter what they are, who they are. These are the three things that are free or relatively cheap to focus on in terms of optimizing our brain health for the best cognitive performance, physical performance, athletic performance, memory, the ability to retain information, to learn new information. These are the things that we need to do that would be considered the bare minimum baseline in order to build our overall brain health. When we talk about sleep, to me, it's a phrase that I say for a lot of our patients. Sleep is the number one performance enhancing drug in the world. And what do I mean by that? If we want to be better people, sleep. If you want to be smarter, sleep. You want to be funnier, better looking, more athletic, sleep. The important part of sleep is that we're getting sleep at night. Okay, when we talk about sleep being a performance-enhancing drug, sleep is when the brain repairs itself, right? When we go to sleep, we get into those deep REM cycles of sleep. It's when the brain tissue itself starts to repair. It's where our brain converts short-term memory to long-term memory. It converts working memory into short-term memory. It creates it works, right? So the brain at night, while we're trying to sleep, is constantly working to heal itself, to better itself, to evolve. So when we talk about sleeping is very, very important. You don't need me to tell you that. Everybody says that to you, right? But when we start talking about sleep, it is the number one thing that if I can get everybody in the world to worry about, that's worrying about brain health, if I can say, hey, what's the number one thing that you need to focus on? Sleep. Improving sleep quality, improving sleep quantity. And when we talk about sleep, it's nighttime sleep. Nighttime sleep is the most important for overall brain health, okay? Not that naps aren't a bad thing, right? But sleeping at night is very, very important. And overall, when we talk about getting that sleep, we want to make sure that we're getting comfortable sleep, restful sleep. The goal is a high quality and a high quantity of sleep. But if we need to focus on anything, the quantity of sleep is more important than necessarily the quality. If we sleep for a long time, generally the quality of sleep is going to be higher. But we're looking for trying to keep a nighttime routine that we can get the hours of sleep that we need. That we'll talk about when we talk about optimizing brain injury recovery. But the goal is that we sleep well and we sleep at night. That's a trick, right, for our third shift workers and those people that are night owls, people that are up for work during the night. When we talk about nighttime sleep, that's a problem when it comes to human biology. And that's why third shift is such a hard challenge for people that are working that third shift world, because the human body biologically is designed to go up when the sun comes up and to go down when the sun goes down. When we start looking at sleeping at night, if I'm a third shift worker, that's not possible because that's my up hours, that's my work hours. So we need to do everything that we can to keep our routines consistent and keep our sleep timing consistent in order to make sure that we're getting that nighttime sleep, whether it's our daytime for our third shift workers or not. We're keeping that big, large chunk that we've trained our brain to utilize as a kind of goal every night. Again, naps aren't a bad thing as long as we're still getting that big sleep at night. So we grow up as kids being told to nap throughout the day. Every adult's the same. I can't speak for anybody else other than me personally. But if somebody tells me that I can get a nap in the day, like I'm in. It's game on. Let's get that nap done, right? As kids, we fight naps like crazy, right? But what happens is as we kind of go through the day, the body's way of shutting down through the middle of the day is a way of kind of restoring energy, replenishing energy levels. And naps aren't a bad thing, especially during brain injury recovery. But if you're napping throughout the day and you're not sleeping at night, we have to figure that out, because we need to make sure that we're prioritizing nighttime sleep versus daytime napping. So naps aren't a bad thing as long as you're getting adequate sleep at night. The second thing that we have to do for the bare minimum is hydration. Every single cellular function that your body does requires water to complete. And we're not talking every time we take a breath or every time we move our eyes one direction. Every single cellular function at the molecular level, at the microscopic level, every single thing that your body does requires water. The human body is about 60% water overall. So if we start talking about the idea that we need more water to function, hydration needs to be something that's important throughout our day-to-day lives, not just drinking when I'm thirsty, right? We need to prioritize drinking water and making sure that we're getting enough water intake throughout the day to provide the body with the fuel and the water that it needs to carry out basic cellular function. When we talk about the idea behind hydration, if you're only drinking when you're thirsty, thirst is the body's way of telling you that it's dehydrated. So if I'm sitting here going, hey, I drink every time I'm thirsty, I'm doing great. I'm prioritizing my brain health. I'm drinking when I'm thirsty. You're already behind the 8 ball because your body's telling you that you're thirsty. So when we talk about trying to do bare minimum things to optimize brain health, hydration is one of those things. The last bare minimum that we need to make sure that we're getting in is we need to make sure that we're focusing on our nutrition. Think about food as fuel. So food is not necessarily something that we eat because it tastes good. Now, granted, food that tastes good is better to eat, in my opinion. But when we sit here and we talk about food, the whole goal of eating is to make sure that the body has the fuel that we need to move forward, the fuel that we need to do our day-to-day routines, to process and utilize that food and fuel as an energy source to function and move through our day-to-day routines. Even if you're on a diet, I'm counting calories, I'm watching how much food I'm intaking, I'm on a special, whether it's an anti-inflammatory diet, an Atkins diet, a keto diet, a Mediterranean diet. If I'm on a diet, we still need to bring food in. When we don't bring food in, the brain doesn't have food and fuel to go through its day-to-day routines. What happens is the body will start storing all of our food as fat as a way of a survival mechanism. So if I have somebody who's on a strict caloric decrease or a caloric diet where they're monitoring and counting calories really, really, really carefully, we need to make sure that it's above that metabolic rate, that basal metabolic rate, the bare minimum that the body needs to function. If not, the body won't utilize that fuel the way that it's supposed to. So we need to make sure that we're doing the bare minimums. We're bringing food in, and we're bringing food in enough that it covers what we're burning as our output throughout our body. So how do we optimize brain health, right? If the bare minimums are hydrate, sleep, and eat, if those are our bare minimums, what do we need to do to optimize brain health? What is that next level that we can take, especially if I'm an athlete preparing to go into a season, or I'm just trying to make sure that I'm doing everything that I can to make sure that my brain is healthy enough to function. In my net, in my scope, in my kind of bias, I talk about brain injuries, right? I talk about concussions, persistent post-concussion syndrome, traumatic brain injuries. I talk about that. But when we talk about optimizing brain health, these are things that we can do to help minimize the risk for dementia and Alzheimer's, to help minimize the risk for traumatic brain injuries like aneurysms, and to doing everything that we can to make sure that the brain's healthy. And as we age, that we've already established that the brain is healthy. That way, if we do encounter some of those unfortunate situations, like a neurodegenerative disease or a God forbid, a brain tumor or something along those lines, or an aneurysm, that we've done everything that we can before the event to make sure that the brain is healthy enough to kind of move forward and do what it needs to do to continue to progress in its brain injury recovery. So what can we do to optimize brain health? During this part, I'm going to kind of break it down into two different sections, right? We're going to talk about adults and we're going to talk about athletes. When we talk about those two groups, it doesn't mean necessarily that as an adult I can't optimize like an athlete. And it doesn't necessarily mean that if I'm not an athlete or an adult, I'm just a regular teenager, that I can't do these things to optimize brain health. So when we start looking at the ways to take that next level and to optimize brain health, we need to dig deeper into those three basics to start: proper sleep, proper hydration, and proper nutrition. So when we talk about proper sleep, sleep is all based on age group and age level. Children, school-aged children, which is defined as ages 6 to 12, the goal is for you to sleep 9 to 11 hours. Again, we're trying to do this at night. And if you're looking at me saying, hey, Matt, what do I do? Like last night, I only slept 6 hours. Is that bad? Am I starting over in optimizing brain health? No. Realistically, life is going to fluctuate. You may have a day where you sleep 10 hours. You may have a day where you sleep 4 hours. That life fluctuation is something that's going to cause brain health to kind of fluctuate, right? Nothing is done in a vacuum. We can't be perfect every single day. One of my key phrases I use is there's a difference between the perfect world and the real world. Ideally, those two line up, but realistically, the perfect world and the real world rarely line up. So we need to do everything that we can when we're talking about optimizing brain health to stay consistent and make it an average on a regular basis. So when we talk about sleep quality, sleep quantity, getting those hours of sleep, for that 6 to 12 age group, sleep is key, right? It's where the body is developing a lot. We're doing a lot in maturity and puberty and doing things to kind of optimize our overall kind of body building and body maintenance and development. That 6 to 12 age group, the goal is for you to sleep 9 to 11 hours a night. From ages 13 to 18, those athletic ages, generally that middle school to high school age group, the goal is for you to get 8 to 10 hours of sleep a minimum. That's where you generally hear, everybody start talking about like, hey, we need to get 8 hours of sleep a night. We need to get 8 hours of sleep a night. The idea starts is when you're an adolescent, we kind of go into our routines and we need to find a way to get 8 hours of sleep a night. The challenge can be, especially for our high school and college age athletes, right? That 8 to 10 hours for the high school age, the 7 to 9 hours for the college age athletes, that your schedule may not allow 8 hours, right? If I'm going to school until 4 and then I've got practice from 4 to 6 and then I've got, youth group or I've got a study group or I've got something that I'm doing, whether it's marching band or something along those lines, that we're practicing 7 to 9 or 7 to 10. And then we got to come home and we got to do homework from 10 to midnight. And then I got to get myself ready for bed. And then I go to bed at midnight and I wake up at 6 to go back to school. Like, yeah, my schedule doesn't allow me to get that. But when we start looking at brain health, we need to find a way to build that into our schedule where we're getting that recommended 8 to 10 hours of sleep a night. If anybody ever asks me, school will start at 10 a.m. You'll go to school from 10 to 4. Practices will be from 4 to 5. Games will be from 5 to 7. Everybody only be in bed by 8 o'clock. You'll get 8 to 10 hours of sleep going 8 o'clock to the next morning, waking up that way. But I'm not in charge of school, right? Nobody asked me that. Nobody wants to know my opinion on it. And if they ever do, I'll tell them that. But the idea is we need to do as much as we can to find that time in our routine to prioritize sleep. The challenge we run into with a lot of people when it comes to brain health and kind of sleep is we see sleep as like a secondary thing. I'll sleep when I'm dead. I don't have time to sleep tonight. I got stuff to do. I got to study for this exam. I got to keep going and kind of focus on making sure that, I'm preparing for the next day. Sleeping is the best way to prepare yourself for that big test, that big exam, that big game. I know it's hard, but ideally we need to do things that we can to prioritize sleep. When we shift into those adult populations, ages 18 to 65, that includes our college athletes, our professional athletes, that includes our adult age groups, the goal that we have all heard growing up is, hey, we need to sleep 8 hours at night. Well, it's because adults function the best 7 to 9 hours of sleep. There's a lot of studying that's being done with sleep. NASA's putting a lot of money into sleep studying because they're trying to figure out how to get people to Mars without the sunlight, right? They're trying to figure out different ways to kind of prioritize the human race and kind of how much sleep that we need to perform cognitive tasks, physical tasks, to kind of focus on overall body, brain, mental, and cognitive health. So the adult age group needs to sleep 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. And then people over the age of 65, when we get into that, what we would consider elderly population, not that 65 is elderly at all. I am a big proponent of age as a mindset. But when we start looking at brain health over the age of 65, the body only needs around 7 to 8 hours of sleep at night. The average American sleeps around 6 to 7 hours at night. The worst thing that you can do for the body is to sleep 6 hours at night, which is why if we start looking at, the differences in different countries in terms of body health and overall physical health, if you compare countries that prioritize sleep, Japan, China, Spain, those countries that they prioritize nap time, they eat well, they hydrate well, they prioritize sleep. Generally, those countries have a higher lifespan and they're healthier than we are in the United States because we prioritize sleep differently here in the US. So when we start looking at the best ways to sleep, we need to start sleeping and kind of looking at those optimized levels for your age group. Now, athletes, no matter the age of the athlete, right? Again, this contradicts what I just said. 18 to 23 years old, my college age athletes, my elite, professional athlete level, that 8 to 10 needs to be a benchmark that you try to aim for all the time when you're healthy. When you're injured, the body needs more sleep. The brain needs more sleep. The body needs more sleep to repair tissue, to create human growth hormone, to kind of fix the injury itself. The body needs more sleep when we're injured. That goes specifically and especially for concussions. The brain heals when we're asleep. We do all the concussion rehab to try to reconnect neurons, to try to train the brain to redo what it already knows how to do. But when we start looking at overall brain health, when we're injured, we need to make sure that we're prioritizing a higher level of sleep than we normally do. And that goal for us being injured is to sleep anywhere from 9 to 11 hours asleep at night. Again, nighttime sleep is the best. But what happens if we're trying to nap during the day? Especially as somebody who's dealing with concussion recovery, naps aren't a bad thing, right? If you're trying to nap throughout the day, as long as we're sleeping at night, it's great. And the best way we can optimize brain health is to ensure that we're taking all naps before 4 p.m. If we take a nap after 4 p.m., the body will start to feel like we're being tricked into that sleep routine at bedtime. So essentially the brain will try to go to sleep. So when we don't, let's say I try to fall asleep at 6 p.m. If I wake up at 7 p.m., the body's like, okay, we're awake for the day, which is why it can be challenging to go to sleep at night after we've taken a nap that long. So napping guidelines, all naps should be done before 4 p.m. The goal for napping should be a 20 to 30 minute nap or an hour and a half to 2 hours. Okay. So we want to do a power nap, right? That 20 to 30 minute power nap. Caffeine naps are a thing where you drink a cup of coffee and the body takes about 30 minutes to naturally break down caffeine in the body to get that effect, that desired effect that caffeine has. So 30 minutes is that kind of that top end of that low threshold, or an hour and a half to 2 hours. We want to try to avoid anything in that 30 to 60 minute window, and we want to avoid anything over that 90-minute window. Because that 90-minute window, the brain will think we're trying to go into a deep sleep cycle. We're trying to go into those kind of REM cycles, and we'll wake up with what's called sleep inertia, where we'll be more tired than when we've tried to go to take a nap, right? So the idea is we want to take a nap that's 20 to 30 minutes or 60 to 90 minutes. The best nap out there for cognitive performance. I touched on it earlier. NASA does a lot of things to study sleep and how much sleep we actually need. One of the things that it did is it studied the amount of sleep that the human brain needs to make cognitive decisions in their pilots. And they found that 26 minutes is the best nap that their pilots were able to make rapid decisions and perform cognitive tasks with not only rapid decision making, but accurate and sharp decisions and sharp motor movements. So in the real world, are you going to get a 26-minute nap in? No. Those naps are done under specific conditions where the body is monitoring, where we're using computers to monitor brain waves, and right when they go to sleep, somebody is waking them up at the 26-minute mark. Okay, that's not going to happen. But when we start looking at the NASA has determined and studied that this is the best possible way to nap, 20 to 30 minute window, a 26-minute nap is the best way to nap. Power naps are much better than those longer 60 to 90 minute naps, but not everybody's the same, right? This is a big generalization. This is just all of the research that's been done, put together, tells us that for most people, 20 to 30 minute naps or 60 to 90 minute naps. The second kind of step in that next direction when we talk about proper hydration and optimizing brain injury recovery. I touched on it a little bit. When you're thirsty and you drink water, you're already dehydrated. Hydration tends to work 24 hours in advance. So the water that I'm intaking right now, my body will use tomorrow. When we start looking at trying to prioritize hydration, we're not drinking only when we're thirsty. We're trying to drink throughout the day. That way we're prioritizing our body function in that water level that we have for tomorrow's activities. Here in the Midwest, it's been 100 degrees all week, okay? It's been hot, it's been humid, it's been a high heat index, high UV, which means that my body has burnt more water trying to keep myself cool, right? So we need to make sure that we're increasing that hydration based on where we are in time, where we are in heat and location, and our physical activity level. A good general rule of thumb when it comes to hydration is trying to intake an ounce per pound of water, right? So an ounce of water per pound of body weight. Let's try to break it down. There's 128 ounces in a gallon. If I weigh 128 pounds, my goal is to drink a gallon of water a day. If I weigh 200 pounds, my goal is to drink 200 ounces of water per day. Now, that's a lot of water, and I understand that. Right? Weighing 200 pounds, if I try to drink 200 ounces of water, I'm going to go to the bathroom a lot. And that's fine, right? That's the way the body tells you that it's hydrated. But when we start looking at hydration, how we can kind of get more, bang for our buck, how we can get more hydration in for the amount of water ounces that we're drinking is using different additives, right? Lightly, adding a light amount of salt, drinking electrolyte water like a Smart Water, a Propel, a Gatorade, a Powerade, Body Armor, adding liquid IV or other, electrolyte powders or squeezes into your drink is the easiest way to get more water retention for what we're taking in. So when I start talking about trying to hydrate for brain health, trying to get an ounce per pound of body weight is tough. It is very hard. But if we're aiming for that ounce per pound of body weight, and I drink 140 ounces ounces of water today, that's over a gallon of water. That's incredible. Like, that's great. Even though I didn't hit my 200 ounce goal, I've still taken in over a gallon of water. That's an incredible amount of water. And when we start talking about trying to find ways to optimize brain health, that's one of the overlooked ways that most athletes will kind of ignore. It's like, yeah, I drink water. I do what I'm supposed to. Afterwards, I really hydrate well. That's not the way hydration works. We need to make sure that we're hydrating all day, every day. Caffeine is one of the biggest dehydrating, substances that we intake on a regular basis. So if I start looking at, I'm trying to drink an ounce per pound of body weight, but I drink a cup of coffee, or I drink a powder that has caffeine in it, caffeine is dehydrating me. So I need to increase the amount of water that I'm taking in. Caffeine's not bad, right? It's not a bad thing, right? This whole idea behind we need to avoid caffeine. Caffeine is a performance enhancer. Right? There's a lot of research that was done in the NBA a couple of years ago that looks at caffeine intake during sport performance enhances performance. So if we're sitting here saying, hey, to the general public, avoid caffeine and caffeine's bad, but every NBA team is drinking coffee and caffeine on the bench, that doesn't necessarily line up, right? So when we start looking at caffeine, we want to avoid high dose, single dose caffeine drinks, Powerade, pre-workouts and Monster energy drinks and those energy drinks and those single dose caffeine levels that are really high in caffeine. We want to avoid those, but a cup of coffee, a pop every now and again, yeah, they're going to dehydrate you, but as long as we're focusing on increasing our hydration levels when we increase our caffeine intake, it's not a bad thing for overall brain health. The third kind of step to optimize brain health overall is we want to make sure that we're getting proper nutrition in. It's not just calories in versus calories out. The basics. I want to make sure I have enough calories in that my body is to fuel my body that it's burning. So the basics, calories in versus calories out. I want to make sure I'm taking more calories in than I'm burning. Okay. Proper nutrition is very specific to each individual. It is very important that you are focusing on the proper type of nutrition. I'm not here to tell you that I'm a nutritionist. I'm not a registered dietitian. I am not somebody who does well in nutrition at all. I will tell you, full transparency, nutrition is not my strong suit when it comes to talking about brain injury recovery. But what I do know and what I can talk to you very strongly, I have a high level of expertise in it, is how we optimize brain health with nutrition. Everyone has a very different goal in mind when it comes to their nutrition, right? My athletes, is it you're trying to perform, you're trying to fuel for a endurance event, you're trying to fuel for basketball, for football, for cross country, or are you trying to perform an explosive event like powerlifting, football, rugby? Everybody has a different goal in mind. As an adult, am I trying to lose weight? Am I trying to cut weight? Am I trying to make sure that I'm taking in a diet that's good for heart health or that's good for digestive health or GI health? All of these different fad diets are out there, but the whole goal is the same. We're trying to give the body the fuel that it needs while cutting down on the bad things that we're intaking. So when we talk about proper nutrition, the goal for all of those different dietary levels, whether you're vegan, vegetarian, carnivore diet, all the different levels, the idea is we're trying to limit processed foods, artificial sugars, and inflammatory foods. Brain health. We'll talk about concussions in particular. So with brain health, when the brain gets hurt, one of the causes for post-concussion symptom is the increased neuroinflammation that comes with the injury. To control neural inflammation, I need to decrease the amount of inflammatory foods that I'm intaking and increase the level of anti-inflammatory foods. Our common anti-inflammatory foods: beans, nuts, legumes, green leafy vegetables, salmon, your lean meat, salmons and chickens. We're trying to decrease the amount of inflammatory foods, processed foods, deep fried foods, artificial sugars, and we're trying to increase those anti-inflammatory foods. Food is important for brain health. Food should never be looked at as a negative. Food should never be looked at as the enemy. And that is something that I stand on when it comes to kind of talking about food in general, from a sport performance standpoint, from a brain injury standpoint, from a brain health standpoint. Food is not the enemy. Don't look at food as the bad guy. Food is fuel. It's the proper food, the proper techniques, the proper cravings that we need to control in order to optimize brain health. So when we're looking at trying to optimize brain health through nutrition, supplements can be great ways to fill in the gaps in our diet. Food will always be the number one source of our nutrients, our vitamins, our minerals, our amino acids. Food is the best way to get those in. But if I have somebody who's a vegan or a vegetarian, they may not get the same level of protein in as somebody with a carnivore diet. There are ways to supplement it, right? Adding legumes and beans in can help that supplementation for that protein. But when we look at trying to add in kind of supplements to our diet, it's great to fill in the gaps. We're about to touch on supplements a little bit, and my one warning I have for everybody: supplements in the United States is an unregulated market. What that means is there only has to be a certain percent of what they actually are putting in that supplement to call it a certain supplement, right? That's a terrible way of explaining it. Last I knew it was 10%. So let's say I want to market a brain supplement. Okay, I want to market something that's got brain health to it. I'm going to put vitamin A, vitamin B, vitamin C in it. And as long as 10% of that total supplement is that vitamin A, B, and C, I can call it vitamin A, B, and C for brain health. I can put chemical additives and fillers in and flavoring in, and I can put anything else in that to cut my costs. But as long as it reaches that minimum 10%, we're good. Be very, very, very cautious when you start looking at adding supplements into your day-to-day routines. When I talk to my patients about brain health and brain supplementation, I always tell them to stay to those natural food stores. Or stay to your CVS, your Walgreens, your Walmart, your Sam's Club, your Whole Foods, your Costco's, because they sell food. When you sell food, The supplements that you're selling also have to hit a certain standard in terms of the FDA clearance that you have with those supplements. So they have a higher standard that they have to maintain because they sell food in their store in terms of the supplements that they carry. When we start looking at supplements, I always look at the supplement list. My patients will take pictures a lot of, hey, I'm getting ready to take this vitamin or this brain health supplement. Is this good for me? They'll send a picture to me and I'll read it. The first thing three things that I look for. It should have a high level of what we're calling, what it's calling it in it, right? It should have 100% of our daily vitamin C. It should have 150% of our niacin. It should have a high level of what you're calling it. If it's a vitamin A supplement, it should have a high level of vitamin A in it. The second thing that I look for, is there any chemical that I can't pronounce? If there's a chemical that I can't pronounce in it, it's what's called a chemical additive. Generally, it's to boost, whether it's to boost flavoring or it's part of the gel capsule. It's something that is a preservative to make it last longer on the shelf life. And what happens with those chemical additives is they become what are called free radicals, that when they get into the body, they can bind to different things inside the body, and the body can create them into essentially anything that they want. In terms of brain injury and brain, post-concussion recovery, the body will actually bind those free radicals with tau protein, which is that negative protein that's produced after a brain injury that gets linked to the chronic traumatic encephalopathy, the CTE, the neurodegenerative diseases, all of the bad things that we're trying to prevent in terms of brain health. That free radical becomes an issue. So when I'm talking with a patient and looking at supplements, I want to make sure that we get a high level of what's actually on the bottle is what's in that. There is no chemical that I can't pronounce. And at most, there's an artificial flavoring. Okay. Especially when it comes to creatine. My whole goal with creatine supplementation, and we're going to talk about what supplements I recommend here in a second, but my whole goal with creatine supplementation is it's creatine monohydrate in a compressed pill or powder, and that's it. It shouldn't have an artificial flavor. It shouldn't have chemical additives. It should taste like chalk. Unfortunately, that chalk taste is what people don't like, so they look at, I want a chocolate version or a vanilla version just to give me something to make it a little bit easier. If I've got somebody who's taking creatine powder and it's got no flavor to it, add it to a chocolate milk. Add it to a flavor pack that's got vanilla or a strawberry milk or a flavor that you like. Add it into that so we're getting that in without all the chemicals that come along with it. So when we talk about optimizing brain health for the age groups, with this one, I broke it down into two groups: young children, adults, and athletes. When we talk about young children, a daily multivitamin designed for your age group. With my kids, they're young. We have them on a dinosaur gummy. It's designed for young kids. It's got, vitamins A, B, C, and D in it. It's got it's got a flavor to it. It's got a cool character on it. I won't tell you that I haven't had them, right? Because they taste good. They're dinosaur gummies. Who doesn't love dino gummies? But when we start looking at the young kids, if we can get them on a routine as a young kid to take a multivitamin every day, specifically for their age group, that's great. We're doing everything that we can to prioritize optimizing brain health. And when I talk about young children, it's under that athletic age, 12 and under. When we start talking about everybody's needs and the needs for vitamins and supplementation, if your doctor has you on something specific, this presentation means absolutely nothing. If I am somebody who's vitamin D deficient and they're taking 50,000 IUs of vitamin D every day, me telling you to take a multivitamin with vitamin D in it is not going to be enough. So if you have something specific that you're on with your healthcare provider for a specific diet or a specific supplement routine, stay that way. They're there for a reason. If you're somebody that's trying to do everything you can to make sure that you stay healthy during your sports season, or you're an adult trying to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to make sure that we're protecting the brain and prioritizing brain health moving forward, these are the recommendations that I recommend based on my knowledge and information on brain health. Okay. So for the young children, a daily multivitamin, making sure that they're taking it consistently every single day, because again, consistency is key when it comes to optimizing brain health. It's a daily responsibility. Taking that every day can help build, number one, can help with habits and daily habits outside of the health world with children. But at the same time, they're getting that necessary kind of routine into their body. Their body's utilizing those vitamins on a regular basis. For my adults and my athletes, what I recommend everybody takes every day: vitamins A, B12, C, D, omega-3s, magnesium, and a branched chain amino acid, BCAAs. And the newer research that's coming out tells us that everybody should be taking creatine on a regular basis. Now, growing up, going through my athletic world, going through my schooling, creatine's bad. It's bad for you. It's going to dehydrate you. It's going to kill your kidneys. It's bad. Now that we're doing a lot of research into supplements, we're learning that creatine, especially for brain health, is actually one of those super, kind of super supplements, those things that are really important for us in terms of optimizing our brain health. We should all be taking some form of creatine monohydrate, anywhere from 5 to 20 grams a day based on our age, based on our goal. Okay. So on top of that, that circles back to our hydration. If I'm taking creatine, and creatine has been known as a dehydrator in the past, hasn't been getting the same kind of proving kind of tag when it comes to the current research. But if I'm worried about dehydration because of my creatine, if I'm drinking 140 ounces ounces of water a day, it doesn't matter my creatine intake, being a dehydrator, because I'm already optimized my brain and my body for that higher hydration level. The magnesium in particular that I recommend, especially for my patients and anybody who's a contact sport athlete, is magnesium L-threonate. If you can get a magnesium complex, great. There's a bunch of different types of magnesium out there. Magnesium L-threonate is good for crossing the blood-brain barrier in rats, which is where the study was done, but it's also one of those supplements that helps us regulate our sleep cycles, helps with headaches, helps with cognitive performance and brain health overall. So when we start looking at magnesium, I recommend magnesium L-threonate at a bare minimum. If you can find a magnesium complex out there that doesn't break the bank that you're taking on a regular basis, that's fantastic. But the goal is we want to get a high level of vitamin A, B12, C, D, omega-3s, magnesiums, BCAAs, and then our creatine monohydrate. Our BCAAs, amino acids, there are a lot of different drink mixes out there that are now tabbed for BCAAs. In the fitness world, the health world, the performance world, BCAAs has been around for a while. They've done a lot of things to kind of optimize, the performance enhancement aspect of BCAAs, but it's something that, adding a scoop of a BCAA powder into your morning coffee or into your morning drink is a great way to kind of set the brain up moving forward for that optimization. Everybody's body is different. Everybody's need for supplementation and need for dietary and hydration changes is different. If you've got something that works for you and it wasn't on the list that I talked about today, does it mean that I'm right and you're wrong? Absolutely not. Does it work for you? 100%. Keep rolling with it. If there's something that you take, especially post-concussion or post-concussion syndrome, somebody who's got a traumatic brain injury that hey, I swear by this, please DM me, shoot me an email, call me, say, hey man, look, this is what I take. This is what works for me. I am always looking at researching different things to try to put together the most comprehensive list of things that I can give for my patients and people that follow along with my concussion clinic to make sure that they're getting what they need to get their concussion recovery moving in the right direction. The next step in optimizing brain health for overall health is movement is medicine. This is a coined phrase that's been around for a long time. Movement is medicine. Exercise is health. If we want to talk about optimizing brain health, it should be establishing a daily moderate exercise routine. Moderate exercise. You don't have to go out and run a marathon. You don't have to go out and bike the Tour de France. Getting up and getting moving, going for a walk, doing yoga, getting up outside and doing some yard work. The goal of a moderate aerobic exercise routine of 20 to 30 minutes a day will improve brain health and cognitive performance. The goal is we want to get anywhere from 120 to 150 minutes a week of exercise. If we look at 20 to 30 minutes times 7 days, 140 to 210 minutes a week, that's great in terms of prioritizing brain health. Now, as an athlete, 20 to 30 minutes is nothing. It's easy, right? That's our warm-up for practice today. But if I'm looking at adults, if I can get up and go out for a walk, go work in the yard, if I can do a yoga routine, trying to find 20 to 30 minutes a day where I can get up and get moving, that movement helps increase blood flow, helps increase the body's production of its natural hormones. It helps optimize brain health. And again, consistency is key. If I can consistently stay moving, if I can do an exercise routine every day, it's better for me than just doing it once or twice. But any exercise is great for brain health. If I can only exercise 2 or 3 days a week, that's better than sitting on the couch every day, right? Don't beat yourself up because I didn't fall into absolute strict guidelines of exercise. Getting up and getting moving, no matter how big, small, how much, how intense, how minimal intense, what that high level or low level of intensity, getting up and getting moving is better than sitting around and not doing anything when it comes to brain health. Trying to get a goal of that 20 to 30 minutes of moderate exercise in every day is a perfect way to optimize brain health while adding on the hydration, nutrition, and our overall sleep goals. Now we're going to kind of pivot a little bit to wrap this up into reducing concussion risk. Again, the perfect world, concussions never happen. I have a very interesting business. I never want to meet anybody. I don't. I want everybody to be healthy. I am here because concussions happen, right? I have this business because I know when concussions happen, you need somewhere to go and you need somebody who knows what they're talking about and knows how to help, which is why I created the business that I have. But my whole goal in life is that nobody ever has to meet me because everybody stays healthy their entire life. So what are some of the things that we can do to reduce the risk of concussion? And I will never say the phrase concussion prevention because there is no way to prevent concussions. Because the only guaranteed way to prevent any concussion from happening is to not hit your head, hit your body, or perform any rapid head or body movements, or avoid any significant falls. Sit on the couch and don't do anything and hope somebody around you doesn't hit you. Still, there is no way to prevent the concussion risk. So my goal is to reduce concussion risk overall. What are the things that we can do on a regular basis to reduce that risk? Because there's no way of preventing it. In athletics, when we talk about prioritizing and reducing concussion risk for athletes, the best way to prioritize reducing concussion risk is proper technique, proper equipment fitting, and functional neck strength. Those are the three things that have withstood the test of time. I have other presentations. I'll dig more into them as more research has come out recently about the different products that are out there. The pads that go on the top of the helmet, the collar that you can wear, the mouthpieces that are out there. There are different products that over the test of time have claimed this reduces concussion risk, this reduces concussion risk, this prevents concussions. The only things that have withstood the test of time is proper technique teaching, proper equipment fit, and then the idea of functional neck strength. It doesn't matter how strong your neck is sitting at the table, right? If I can if I can hook a traditional neck machine up in the gym and I can do lateral bending and flexion and extension at 20 pounds, that's not functional neck strength. When we talk about functional neck strength, we need to be able to control our head and neck in an environment that's unpredictable. So there are different ways to build functional neck strength. The Verstigi tuck and roll is one that I talk about a lot, and it's one that I've got videos on, and I'll put out another video now that I'm talking about it. I'll put out another video on utilizing the Verstigi tuck and roll exercise into your daily exercise routine in order to improve traditional functional neck strength. That is something that as we age, neck strength goes down. Overall strength goes down, but neck strength goes down. So doing things that we can as we age to increase functional neck strength can help us in the off chance that we do fall, or we do get into a car accident, or we do get somebody who runs into us, or we hit our head. It's an easy way to do it. Now, did I just knock, isometric strengthening and isokinetic neck strength? Yes, I did. But if I have somebody who's 65 years old sitting in a chair and the only neck strengthening that I have available is taking a towel and wrapping it around my head and holding it while I try to pull my head back, is that bad? No, neck strength is never bad, right? But if we're trying to optimize brain injury health and trying to reduce the concussion risk, we need to prioritize that functional neck strength. But any neck strengthening is good for you if done properly. The next kind of tie-in with this whole presentation on optimizing brain health is one of the ways of reducing concussion risk is making sure that the brain is healthy enough before the concussion ever happens. If we're doing everything that we've talked about throughout this entire presentation, throughout this entire webinar, if you're doing those things already, you are reducing the risk of concussions. If I'm making sure that the brain's hydrated and making sure that it has the high levels of vitamin A, B12, C, D, omega-3, magnesium, BCAAs, creatine, if I have all of those in my system, I am reducing the concussion risk. Not only am I reducing the risk because the brain health is higher, if something does happen, having those nutrients and supplements in my system within the first hour post-injury makes the neurometabolic cascade less intense. So it slows that neurometabolic cascade, limiting the amount of damage that's done, and provides resiliency to that injury itself so recovery goes quicker. So the whole goal of reducing concussion risk, if we're doing everything we can to build that resilient brain, to build resiliency to injury itself that we've talked about throughout this presentation, we are reducing concussion risk overall for all age group, from my young kids, my 6-year-olds playing on the playground, to my 75-year-old who's still out doing triathletes, to my 80-year-old that's just hoping not to fall down at home. We're doing everything that we can to reduce the risk of brain injury by optimizing brain health through proper sleep, proper nutrition, and proper hydration. This whole presentation, the key takeaways that I hope you got, that I hope you kind of followed along with, is we wanted to make sure that you knew what building a resilient brain is, what resiliency really means. The fact that resiliency does not mean that you're unbreakable. It just means that you're setting yourself up into a proper fashion and that you're doing everything in your power to make sure that the brain is healthy. The bare minimums in brain health, to optimize our brain health, to make sure that we're establishing the bare minimums: sleep, proper hydration, proper nutrition, making sure that we're doing those every single day and not just picking and choosing when we want to prioritize brain health and when we don't. The third thing is optimizing brain resilience, making sure that we're getting the proper amount of sleep at night, prioritizing that nighttime sleep versus daytime naps, doing napping correctly, and then making sure that we're sleeping the proper amount of hours for our age group, making sure that we're getting the right type of hydration in, trying to focus on getting an ounce per pound of body weight of water into our system every day, trying to make sure that we're staying consistent with our water intake, not just doing it once or twice, and then saying, hey, we did it last week, we don't need to do it this week. And then the proper nutrition. Make sure that we're, number one, getting enough calories in, that the body has the fuel that it needs to burn. We're limiting the inflammatory foods that we're bringing in. We're increasing the anti-inflammatory foods. And we're making sure that we're utilizing supplements to fill in the gaps of our regular diet. Those vitamins A, B12, C, D, omega-3s, magnesium, creatine, and BCAAs, to make sure that we're making that brain as resilient as we can to brain health. And then the fourth thing is a couple different things that we've utilized, knowing that those optimizing brain health and building brain resiliency will reduce concussion risk overall. Those are the key takeaways that I wanted to make sure we touched on during today's webinar. If you're still around, thank you for sticking around. The Midwest Concussion Clinic is a virtual concussion clinic that functions out of the state of Indiana. I treat patients from the ages of 5 all the way to 88 has been my oldest patient. But I treat patients of all ages and help patients of all ages go through their concussion recovery and take their concussion recovery back into their hands, 100% virtual. If you stuck around this long, shoot me a DM, shoot me a message. If you got a question, I'll answer them. My favorite thing to do is to interact with people, whether you're a patient, whether you're a provider, whether you're a support system, or whether you're just curious. I love interacting. I love teaching. I love sharing. I do an MCC Lunch and Learn every third Wednesday of the month. The goal is to go every third Wednesday at noon live here on my YouTube, and now the TikTok, I'll see how well it did in terms of views. I think we'll do either a live TikTok or a live stream on our different social media platforms to try to gain more involvement with just our YouTube channels. But if you're not following along over on YouTube at MW Concussion, on TikTok, Instagram, X or Twitter, we're at MW Concussion on all of our major platforms. Facebook is the Midwest Concussion Clinic. I'm over on LinkedIn. My goal is to take everything that I have, as much knowledge as I can, and give it out for free to as many people as I can to make sure that you're getting, number one, the support that you need if you're if you need that brain injury support. But my whole goal in life is to help people. So if you're not following along, please follow along. If you're curious on whether or not I can help you through your concussion recovery, the link in my bio on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok has links to a 15-minute free consultation, one-on-one call. I call it a discovery call to see what we can do for you, answer questions that you might have. If you're trying to schedule, there's links in there. You can shoot me an email. You can call me at the number on the screen. This office number is also, it's a Google number, comes right to my cell phone. You can text me questions. You can text me to schedule. We can go through that route. But at the end of the day, be a friend, tell a friend. My whole goal is to help people. So sharing my stuff, sharing my posts, coming in and interacting, allowing me to grow this virtual business will allow me to stay as a virtual business and continue to share these things moving forward. As always, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Again, my name is Matt Campbell. I'm the